Jesus, you're all that I want. I am resting here in your arms. Everything I'll ever need is in your presence. Your love is all that I need, and I found it there in your heart. Isn't too hard to see, it's nothing better. It isn't too hard to see. It's nothing better. It's nothing better.
Welcome to Journey to Service. I'm William Laddick, and with me once again, Randall Earl Kaiser. How are you, Randall?
Oh, I got to keep saying wonderful every time. Otherwise, people would think there's something wrong, right? So I'm a little better than wonderful today. How's that?
Oh,
we got an increase.
A little above wonderful. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Maybe I'll call you Mr. Wonderful. Who had that nickname anyways? I can't remember.
I don't know. There was a wonder dog, I think, one time. But...
Well, that's underdog, I think. Well, definitely underdog, because I was a fan of the underdog, and I've always been a fan of the underdog. Go underdog. Speaking of underdogs, how about them truckers?
Oh boy, so amazing, eh? I really have pity and mercy. I won't say God have mercy, because God will decide. And we're going to talk a little bit more about God today too. I will say that I, as a man, have mercy and pity on these ridiculous politicians, because all they're doing with every step they make these days is bringing another peace-loving, what was the other word I was thinking with peace-loving, like Canadian up, waking them up and saying, really, we want to live in a country like this? And the rallies keep getting bigger. Ours was some people said 15,000 yesterday. I taped the whole thing from an overpass, and it was long. I'm sure it was the biggest we've had. And then the cars and trucks that follow us and honk the horns afterwards and driving all around downtown, just blaring on their horns. It was stunning. And I mean, 10 degrees, 9 degrees yesterday. Today she dropped down to -7. So thank God it was yesterday. Going down to -17 here tomorrow, I heard. So, the weather's on our side, God's on our side, love's on our side. It's all good, and it's not as if it's two sides. You have to have those characters in this play, in this movie, for this thing to roll out, for humanity to ascend. There has to be death and there has to be life, it just is the way it is. I mean, it's stunning. I'm so happy. It's just been, and William, I want to just say quickly before I keep going on, but that the ascension process is so holistic. Okay. It's amazing. People are learning more. We're going to talk about health and, some of these from the farmer's mouth kind of ways of looking at viruses and things like that. And we're going to use that V word. We won't use the other V word and the C word, because we might get, a check mark or something like that. But we're going to talk about viruses today, later, and from a farmer perspective. And I think that people will like this, because it's real simple stuff. But that is rising, people learning more and more about what's going on and in that aspect, or in the health field. The idea of spirituality, my God, the 22nd of February, everybody's talking about that on a Pluto level, or, there's people talking about alignments with planets and stuff that's never happened since 1776. And it's just so many different things that are, fitting together in this ascension, including the work in the banks. Gold keeps going up, silver keeps going up. What's that going to do? It's just going to expand the wealth at the level above the government. And I'm not just talking about corporate, loony versus governments. I'm talking about the central bank system. So you keep filling it up and filling it up. And the people that have that are saying, God, like so many of them every day are saying, we just want to put it through to humanity. Humanity needs our help. And it's just beautiful to watch that aspect of it too, brother. So I'll let you speak for a minute. Sorry about that.
Let you catch your breath. How's that for a hello, everybody?
Hello.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember last week we came on the call, and I don't know, you were just a little bit out of sorts. Not way out of sorts or anything, but you were definitely frustrated at some things that had happened, and there were some things about the show that we did last week that you were not overly comfortable with, and we made some adjustments, and that was fine. But it seems like you really kind of flipped something from that moment. And this week, by the looks of it, by the sounds of it, the way you've been describing everything has really, I don't know if you can say turned a corner, but definitely has changed for you. There's you've got that optimism back again. You're feeling good. You're loving life. You always loved life, but you're loving life even more. So there's been a lot of good things. And also, I know this week you had one of your, I guess, once a month approximately conversations with Hamid and Jenny, and that's on their BitChute channel as well. And that went on, and that was talking about health too. So why don't we jump into health? We can even mention a little bit about a mental health if you want, because of maybe the place you were at, and now you're feeling much happier as far as how things are going. So just fill us in on the health perspective, mentally, physically, and spiritually, in any other way you want to talk about health to this week. How's that for a loaded question?
Sure. Well, let's start. I want to just, can you link that show with Hamid and Jenny? Because that was super. Like, it was, Jenny really brought some very good perspective to the health aspect of things. So if you don't mind, we'll link that on the bottom here again for people that didn't get the link before, because that was a super show. Like, honest to God, I felt so good. And we didn't talk anything about flat earth, which Hamid and I disagree on. So it was just all out healthy, beautiful energy transfer. And Nadia came along too. Like, she's a Russian lady that lives in, I'm not sure if Hamid and her are married, but they're married, like they're married in here anyway. But yeah, lovely couple. And Jenny's just so wise, like, and such a sweetheart. Like, anybody that listens to her is going to get something out of that, because she's one of the wisest health practitioners I'd say I know. Like, she's just got it all. But I want to go back a little bit to what happened last week. And you're right. I mean, I asked you to take a little bit of that show out because I felt bad about asking. But man alive, talk about the dark night before the dawn, or the darkest night of the soul, or whatever you want to call it. Holy cow. It just, and it hasn't quite ended for me. Like, we had 2 people in our group that were threatened to be on the street, honest to God. And some of the most highly intelligent, connected people that I know. And how could that ever happen? I mean, somebody said to me, well, you got to always be looking after yourself and caring for your monetary future, But it's like, when we are completely engaged in humanity, like we are, these, there's more than 3 of us, but the 2 people that had a problem, and myself, and there's more. Like, we've got 5 or 6 others in our group that are really focused as well. But when those 2 people got to that place where, my God, they didn't have enough to pay for their room, like, holy shit. One guy's in Moscow, for Christ's sake, even though it's warmer there than it is here today. But that really bothered me. And then me asking our audience, who have never asked before for anything other than maybe to buy a book from us, it was really tough on me, and it didn't feel good. And we did collect, I'm going to say, just over $200. And between that and the final part of a contract that I took last fall to get me through the winter for a loan and get me through, to this point where we're at now. I gave some more of that to them. And between that couple $100, I think it was 6 or 7 ladies that put in a nice little gift to us. I've got all their email addresses, and I swear they're all going to get a gift back. And if they don't want it, they can give it to somebody else. But that's the way I roll. Like when it's a gift from God, God being the goodness inside of the people, then it gets returned. Okay. When the banks are lying to you about how they have money, like that's a different story as far as giving back to them. And I mean, we do it because we're mind trained into doing it, and we don't know that debt is an illusion, like I wrote in the book. So we do it, and we think in terms of we'll be guilty if we don't and stuff like that. But honestly, the more people that stand up to this ridiculous notion of banks having something, or even if they have something that's from somebody that's holding humanity's accounts, okay, like these off-ledger accounts, and if that government in between took the bonds to those upper ledger people and said, keep us going because we have the people's consent. And that's the way it worked. Like there could be 2 ways. I'm not saying it doesn't work both ways. There's the governments just manifest it with your autograph and agreement as a promise to pay back, but they also could get credit from these upper level accounts. Okay. So I'm going to add to my story that little bit because I've never really talked about that before. But either way, like people that give to me in terms of monetary, like I say, if it's not money, I'm going to arrive at those ladies' doorstep one day with a big bloody bouquet of roses that's going to surpass any value that each of them had. So you get to choose, ladies. What do you want? Me on your doorstep with flowers, or a great big basket of chocolates, or what? Like it's up to you. You can take some cash back, or you can take that. So it's like that made me feel good that we were able to collect that little bit. It was enough to keep these people off the street for that couple of days so that they could rebalance and get a little bit of footing again. And the lady has. The man in Russia, not quite yet. So I'm still working on that. But I'm not asking for any more. We've got it. Like it's okay. But thank you is all I can say. And that was what, kind of put me off last week. So I'm going to pass it back to you to start off the health thing. I don't think we need to talk much about, well, I could just say quick. The rally yesterday was just awesome. And I mean, Randy got a little bit up, okay? Randy being the ego guy in me, and one character, as I was walking right up to the rally point, standing behind a great big iron fence with this thing on his face, giving everyone the finger, hollering at them. So, and there was lots of ladies around. So I stepped in right in front of him. He had his finger almost up my nose. And I said, keep going, brother. You got the big iron fence between you. I said, this is going to keep going. And I'm going to keep talking louder if you keep talking louder. So we did that for about, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And then I walked away as he was having a hard time breathing because he was hollering so much. So he took this thing off of his face. And I said, yeah. He says, you're going to have a heart attack. I said, I'm going to have a heart attack? Look at this thing. Look at this mammal. You think it's not healthy? I said, I didn't do all this stuff to myself to cause me into, depending on something else. You should go lose some weight and, take that dirty thing off your face. It was dirty. It was like one of those blue diapers that they wear, and it was like grubby. I thought, oh my God, it's just insanity. But that ended fairly well. I only spent a minute and a half, got my heartbeat going. And then I went to the rally and the horses were there again. So one more quick story on that. So that there was one officer that was maskless, a young lady riding the one horse, big smile on her face. The other one, big black all the way up to his eyes, and then sunglasses. So I looked up at him and I said, so what do you think? Are you ready? And he says, ready for what? And I said, to trample people like they did in Ottawa yesterday if they don't, get out of your way today. Is that what Are you ready for that? Well, they better smarten up. That was his words, honest to God. So then Randy got a little loud again. And there was a whole bunch of other cops right around them like that. And I said, so you heard what he said, eh? We're the ones that need to smarten up, the peace-loving individuals, while you guys with weapons and horses to trample people are going to tell us to smarten up. Is this smart? Is everything that's going on really smart? And I kept going for another minute there with that crew, and I was loud. There was quite a few people. One guy comes up to me, listen. It's one of the peacier guys, you know. And usually I'm in that mode too. Don't get me wrong, but he says, listen, these guys haven't done anything. They've always been here for us. I said, well, are you ready to smarten up? Because he's ready to run over you if you don't. And that guy walked away too, you know. So then there was one more incident. Sorry, there was 3 incidents that were really cool. So we're on the street, 15,000 people walking down the street, and these 3 scantily dressed, I'm not sure if they were women or men. Don't get me wrong. They could have been, you know, a little of each, because they had on so much makeup you couldn't imagine, and scantily dressed in the middle of the street with at least 12 police officers. Oh shit, I got 4. I got to go one more. But with at least 4 police officers or 12 police officers surrounding them, you know, to protect these people, these women who were doing this again, swearing and cussing at the you know, the marchers, like the people. It was stunning to see that. Next one, okay, quickly, was there's a bar in town that announced last week a doctor, a very smart doctor from the Foothills Hospital, offered to this bar, because this bar had to make their own signs now. There's no more government signs for mandates to get in with your pass, right? That's done. It's over. But this bar decided they're going to keep it going. I guess that, you know, they had a capitalist venture going on there that they were really, you know, getting customers. So they decided, whoa, we're going to keep this going. So they made their own sign and made their own rules. I walked in there the day before the rally and I asked him, and I said, can I sit down? I want a free beer. And he says, well, you can't come in without that thing. And I said, I actually put my, what you call it?
Ladies'
my
underwear?
neckerchief. No, I didn't have them anymore. I threw them away. But I put on my neckerchief because I knew that they weren't going to let me in without that for sure. But I wanted to play. So I went in and I said, well, that law's passed already. Yeah, but we're making our own rules. I said, really? That's pretty silly. I said, how did it go? And then he says, and that beer thing was yesterday. He said, that's done. I said, how did it go? Was there lots of people? Oh, it's packed in here. I said, well, that's good. I said, that's really cool. So then I said, he kept asking for the thing. And I said, well, I don't have it with me. I didn't want to let on that I didn't have it at all. I just said, I don't have it with me. But I said, I walked past with, 10,000 people right past here because it goes right by that bar, every Saturday. So you can see me tomorrow as I walk past again, and a lot of the people in there have that thing too, that pass thing, And that was kind of the end of that one. It was a little bit of a fun trip, but we did walk past the next day, 3 cops standing in front of that bar too, protecting them from peaceful, passive, that was the other word I wanted to say, waking up the peaceful and passive Canadian heart. Okay, that's what's happening. All of this negativity, all of this aggression, all of this War Measures Act or whatever, this Desperate Measures Act, as one guy had a sign out, he said Desperate Measures Act, and that's all it is. All that's doing is bringing more of the peace-loving, passive Canadian heart into reality. So thank you very much, Justin. We love you.
It's almost like the more they do the things that are opposite to, what the intention is of the group that is saying, peace loving, we want free choice, is it's almost like the more you do it, the more they resist, the more they perpetuate you guys, like your movement and the message behind your movement. It's sort of cyclical. It's almost like they can't help themselves, but by not being able to help themselves, they really don't help themselves because they help you guys. And it just keeps cycling up like a spiral, like it just keeps climbing higher and higher and bigger at the top, right? More and more people, as you can tell. I mean, you've been showing the rallies every Saturday, pretty much for months, and it's quite obvious that every time you show it, there are more people there, with the exception of maybe a cold weather snap or something like that. But when the weather's good, the people are out and they're getting bigger in the amount of people you're seeing, right?
It is. And I shared a thing on Facebook today that I thought was really nice. And I've talked this way and thought this way for a while myself, but it's the mirror, like when you say to somebody, I don't like you, you might as well be saying you don't like yourself, because everything is a mirror, right? So when we say to the government, we don't like you, then they don't like us, like it's the mirror. But if we say we love you and we want freedom and we want peace and that kind of language, then the mirror comes back at you. So what are they doing? As if there's a they, okay? So if Justin Trudeau Castro is actually a being or whatever, and his media that he speaks on is saying, we want to control you, then what's he going to get? He's going to be controlled. So it's just the mirror effect on doesn't matter if it's me and you speaking to each other, or Justin Trudeau Castro speaking to the masses, like it, or to me over his television, right? And his controlled media. So it's beautiful, brother. It's just a wonderful thing.
It reminds me of the Chinese finger trap. Have you ever seen those where you put your two fingers in at each end, and then when you try to release, you can't, because the more you force it, the tighter it is, and the less you can get your finger, and you can start to panic because you can't get your fingers loose. And then apparently the way it releases is when you relax, and then you can let your fingers out. So the more that they resist, the more they want to fight, the more they're scared or whatever. It seems to only perpetuate more of what they don't want.
Beautiful example. I never heard that one before, but that's perfect, William. I love it. And it's about staying calm, right? It's not about emotions. And when we bring emotions in and passion, what we talked about last week on the show, that word passion, then, the potential is to stay in that trap, like you said.
Well, let's bring up some V words, shall we? Or at least one of them. You wanted to talk about some health issues and some health topics. And I guess you've been doing a little digging, a little research. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? We won't talk about the word that starts with the V that rhymes with axe, but we will talk about the other V word. So, you were talking. Did that come up, by the way, in your conversation with Hamid and the gang there on the Rumble call?
Oh yeah, wide open, because on Rumble you can speak and use those words, right? So right. It was very, very good conversation, and from all aspects, there was no holding back. So the only thing we're going to hold back on is those two words, because they're just words, and words are all about what we think about, right? So the world of man, I like to start off with this and bring in these words that you and I have played with for a year. Autograph and agreement and things like that. But the world is what I like, because we don't live in a world, or I don't. That's the world of man. I live in heaven on Mother Earth, and I function with people. But the world of man is the human construct, and that human construct is based on limitations, right? So world, W-R-L-D, the L in my mind means limitations. And we've always done that. There's always been stories that limit people. There's no limit to the amount of value we can put on gold, for instance, or there's no limit to the amount of gold that's here and still being, produced by Mother Nature and stuff. So the whole story of gold and silver and money is all just based on limits. So, there's the banking side just for a minute, but we'll go into the other stuff. But at first I wanted to say one more thing about the word world. Word is how everything was created, right? Godly. It's a biblical word. You know, the word is the creation, and we think in terms of words. And we use the English language, which is very manipulated language, with more words added every day to describe some pharmaceuticalism plan that they've got going on, and, you know, chemicals and stuff like that. But the simple things still have the same words, you know, to describe them. Trees, rabbits, coyotes, you know, they stayed the same. But when it comes to manipulating or limiting and exploiting mankind, well, let's add some more words, you know? So the word love, if we insert that into the word word instead of limit, so WORL as in love, D, then that's what the new world is, right? And that new world has to bring back the love and bring back the kindness and the beauty and the peace and all of those kind of words, right? Words that sometimes we forget, and words that should be at the front of every politician's mind. Okay, we destroyed the idea of church and state. We separated them how many hundreds of years ago, right? And said, no, we can't do that. Well, only if you are limiting again the religion, right? So if the religion in America is Christian, then I say, yeah, don't do that. But can you use the word God? Of course you can. And people can choose then from there how they see God. But bring in other words like peace and love when you're doing your prayer before your parliament starts, before your legislature starts. Put it up above, you know, so that both sides of that winged pyramid, the Democrats and the conservatives, can actually look up there and see God in some manner. Just a, you know, some representation of some kind. I'm not saying Jesus Christ on a cross. I don't like that idea, but, you know, some representation of God and love, and see that, so that they have that in their heads instead of just arguing back and forth about nothing. Words. So
I had to smirk. I had to smirk at that. You know, like I've heard it said many times that if you buy into the propaganda on the sort of the truther side, if you want to call it that, is that a lot of the folks who are dark hat, we'll use that term for the moment, have taken certain symbols and bastardized them or turned them toward their favor or whatever. Like a lot of people, including myself, I didn't know this, but the swastika, for example, it was used obviously by the Nazis and has a very negative connotation in our world today. But actually, my understanding is if the swastika was reversed, there's an older meaning to it and a very beautiful meaning to it. So that's just one example. But when you said the two pillars coming together and looking up and honoring God, I mean, the word God came to my head. I couldn't help but think of the Masonic symbol with the compass, which comes to a point and then has two things coming down, and the big G, which I think would stand for God. So I'm going, it can work in the other way around too. We can convert symbols that have sort of a negative connotation and put it into something positive. So I couldn't get that out of my head. I kept smirking and smiling about that. I thought you could turn that, you know, that Masonic symbol into something positive, you know, and, you know, using the example you just mentioned. So just a little funny thought to add to our conversation. But I want to reel us back in to talk about health, because you know, we're getting on in the show already. We haven't even gotten to the subject matter that you want to talk about today. So going to reel you back in and rope you and tie you up and say, okay, let's talk about some health. So let's talk about some physical health.
Well, it won't take very long, but we're on this God in the middle thing just for another minute or two, okay? Because the triangle oftentimes gets a, you know, a negative connotation, or like you said, the Masonic symbol. But really and truly, whether it's a man, woman, you know, and God, you know, or if it's a left and right political agenda and God, you know, there's nothing really wrong with that. I you know, symbols, like you say. We had that one time when poor Cody was on, and what was he doing? He was doing something like this or something, and oh my God, he's a bad guy. Like it was hilarious because as I've said all week long, please people, and I'm going to say this once again, find the good in things, because good is the God. Okay, God is the good in everyone and everything every day. So find the good stories to share. If we focus our energy on the negative things, we're not going to get anywhere. Of course, you want to know those negative things, but when you share the good things, and keep that rising, that ascension happening of the good, right? Okay, that's good enough.
Well, you know
So
what?
start us off.
I'm gonna keep it going for a second because I
Okay,
had one
good.
more thought.
Thank you.
I had used the word world. You mentioned, that the L was in there, and it was right in the middle of the word and changing it to world, and somehow that word world was somehow blocking the meaning of word and the intention of word. And what I thought, I had a visual thought around it, because L, the small letter L, is just a straight line. So in a way, I see it kind of like a wall. So putting that L in there blocks the word from being complete. And so, you got, and WOR could be pronounced as war. So you take the wall, you separate the word, and you have war on one side, and just a little letter left on its own in the form of the D by itself. And then of course you later on you change, you added something positive to it, speaking of what you were just talking about, by putting L standing for the word love, and you're putting that in there, and you're going, okay, now you're expanding the word into something that has a loving intention. So that's kind of cool too. So I'm not sure if you want to talk about, have any comments about that. Otherwise, let's talk about health.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. War on one side,
yeah,
and then D on the other.
Yeah.
So war, destruction, demolition, those kind of words on the other side, and then limit, like then it becomes a really nasty word, but you put love in there, and then it's just world, like it just whirs out of your mouth. Thanks, William. I mean, that was fun, and we just kept adding to each other's story, which is what I preach all the time too. Work with and not against. I'm in Bankers Hall again, 3rd day in a row, or 4th, I'm not sure, and I'm going to go upstairs by the Swift room. I always do, just give it a little blessing, and say, we're coming, just relax, everything's fine, and we're not stepping back because we love you. That's it.
There you go. And if you combine the word and love, you get woved. I woved you. I woved you all. It's like Elmer Fudd, and that only makes you laugh, right? Because Elmer only makes you laugh.
Of course.
And laughter is a good thing. Laughter is a wonderful thing for people's health too. I mean, just laughing and being, in that positive state, in that joy. I mean, how can you not help but feel good? I mean, we've heard it said that when you laugh, you release endorphins, and when you release endorphins, that only makes you feel better. And again, it's that perpetuating thing, right? So, all kinds of cool things coming out today, like who knows where it's coming from. I think one came out of my right ear here, but lots of fun.
When we were young, I used to show cattle, right? And go out to shows, and we used to have a booth, and we'd display, if we didn't have an animal there, we'd have photographs and stuff. And one year this guy was next to us, and he was selling weigh scales, right? For a company, for weighing cattle or weighing grain or whatever, it was a farm show, right?
Yep.
And he had these weigh scales. And we started talking about Elmer Fudd. And this lady comes up, and she's like cute. And I looked at her and I said, hello there. You want to get weighed? Sorry, I'll stop.
Yeah, good idea.
There, miss. You want to get weighed?
If they didn't get the joke, think of Elmer Fudd, and we'll leave it there. Okay, so we'll just move on.
Move on very quickly.
Let's talk about viruses, you wascally babbit.
You betcha, brother. So yeah, I was gonna say, and I've researched this for years, but I wanted to put a few words out, so I wrote them down. I mean, I went through what they call BSE, or mad cow disease, here in Canada. I don't know, 2001, I believe it was, or 3. Yeah, which was first? 9/11 was 2001, wasn't it?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so 2003, we got hit with BSE, they said, So what was going on back then was we were treating cattle for a parasite, or a couple of parasites, with a drug called.
Shut up. No way.
Sorry,
come on.
No, sorry, wait a minute. I got to back up. Prior to that, we were treating them with Spot On and Negabon. And these were chemicals that were harsh, okay? And they had metals in them, okay? And metals that changed the blood and eventually got into the blood of the animals, right? And I studied this with a friend from the UK. He was an organic farmer, Mark Purdy. He passed away a few years ago, but man alive, did we ever uncover some stuff when it came to prions and misfolded prions versus prion proteins, okay? So they use the word prion to describe the misfolded prion, but the prion protein is actually a very healthy part of our body that occurs and has a reason, right? So I got thinking about that this morning. So I dove into bacteria, viruses, prions, and then parasites. And I was just thinking about that as I was waking up from my 6th day of fasting, when all the parasites, all the bacteria, and the prions proteins go to work and clean your brain, right? Because they're all able to do that then. They're not working, your body's not working on other things, trying to cleanse you of all of those things, right? The bacteria, the viruses, the prion, misfolded prions, and the parasites. So all of these things kind of fold together, right? When you say things that are challenging the biological mammal, right, that we are, or the bovine, which I was dealing with, at the same time, which is a very similar story. You can't deny it. They're animals just like we are. So what came to me was that, back to that, the smallest of these, okay, viruses and bacteria are very small, but prions, or prion proteins, are the smallest. That's the nanoparticles, right? And they have to be small because they're actually in our central nervous system. And the brain has a blood-brain barrier. So your brain is just an oily mass of gray matter. Blood doesn't flow through there. When they show you pictures of blowing somebody's brain out with a gun and the blood splatters all over, I laugh at that. I'm like, well, where'd the blood come from? You only got a little bit in your skin, and but there's none up there, up here. That's gray matter, So if it splats on the wall in the bad guy show where they blow his brains out, it's gray. There's a little bit of red, but it's mostly gray. That's gross, but I had to add that because it is so ridiculously insane how we get manipulated into things and stuff, right? Stories. So this prion protein, the healthy prion protein, is inside of our brain and our central nervous system, in other areas too, but mostly brain and central nervous system. And its purpose is to take out some of these metals, like zinc, copper, and manganese are the 3 main ones, but they help to, if they're healthy, a healthy immune system, and the prion protein is working properly and not misfolded by an overload of metals. We're getting some stuff here that people will start to grasp, right? So as long as they're functioning properly, they distribute those metals out of the body. A metal like graphene, for instance, that has been talked about that may be involved in this, right? Metals that were involved in this for many years, like mercury, okay? People can just look this stuff up. It's very simple. I'm not talking in terms of some doctor or anything. Like I'm bringing it to some real simple words that people can hear me and then do a little bit of research on your own. It doesn't take much. So if there's something in this that's doing that, what was the reason for that? Is it experimental or is it genocidal? I don't think it's genocidal. I think it's just experimental. They're every time you interrupt the body with some kind of pharmaceutical, you're experimenting. That's all there is to it. So did you want to stop me for a minute or?
No, well, I was thinking about the word investigational. I had read that that there was that word used in front of the jab liquid from the CDC when it was originally released, and it magically disappeared when it became more public. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That's the only thought that was really running around in my head. So carry on.
Yeah. Well, you know, I hear all kinds of stories. Don't get me wrong. What I'm trying to do today is really simplify it, you know, like not take either side, so to speak, you know, like I'm not going to call it bad or good or, you know, that it's causing harm, but there's no doubt in anyone's mind that science is about experimenting, right? So when you do something like they've done with this new one, it's an experiment. And no matter what doctors say, most times it takes years to experiment on something before they come up with some, you know, a solution. And in this case, boom, it was available fast, right? So just something to consider. But again, the challenge with the prion and the prion protein, the healthy one, versus the misfolded prion, which they just call prions, which bothers me because then as soon as I say the word prion, people are thinking, oh, it's like bacteria or virus or, you know, something like that. Or so, but it's not. The prion protein is very healthy and it's there for a reason. And it's to take the metals out. So a lot of degenerative mental or brain challenges come down to this, okay? Come down to that prion protein not being healthy and becoming misfolded because there's an overload or too much of the metal in our systems, right? And eventually getting into the brain through nanoparticles. So that was kind of that level. Okay, that's the lowest and the smallest. And then we get up to the next level, which is viruses and bacteria. And in that, you know, we can think about Halkuth's homeopathy, okay, which was the original idea of what this is about. And it didn't have to be here. You could drink it and stuff too. So you introduced a very, very, very tiny bit of the virus into the body so that the body would attack it. That's the whole idea behind what's going on with this, right? Is that you're supposedly introducing it so the body attacks it and you know, creates immunity on its own. But the tiny bit that is involved with Heilkunst homeopathy is just minuscule. And people still use that to this day. And it's beautiful treatment. It's a natural treatment. It's not based on, you know, a bunch of chemical additions and whatever else they're putting in the solution, right? I thought that something that he said, oh no, this is on to the next step. Go ahead. You were going to say something, brother?
Nope, nothing.
Okay. So that's at that level. Then we go up to talking about viruses and bacteria. Then you bring in these two fellows back in the late 1800s, 1900 era, Beauchamp and Pasteur, who I've mentioned a couple times. Pasteur turns out to be pretty much a plagiarist, you know, stole material from everybody else, kind of like Einstein. And Beauchamp was this character who said, no, it's terrain theory. He's got this idea. And if you look up Beauchamp and do terrain theory, you'll find some really cool stuff. It's hard to find Antoine Beauchamp on the internet. Can you find Pasteur? In a heartbeat? Like he's all over the place, you know? And that gave rise, his germ theory, Pasteur's germ theory, gave rise to pharmaceuticalism as it is today. I use the word pharmaceuticalism because it is ism, you know? That's what it is. It is what it is. Ism. So Beauchamp said something that I wrote down this morning because I was reading a little bit of stuff about him. Nothing is lost and nothing is created. Everything is transformed. I thought that was really cool wisdom words coming from a man who's just, you know, very wise and then thinking in natural terms about the terrain theory, which basically says that we are poisoned by the things we put into our body, okay? And then our body wants to reject them. And that's basically all that's going on. Does that mean we can't pass a virus or a bacteria to each other? Well, it's pretty hard to do, but the potential's there. I'm not going to deny it. And again, you see where I'm going today? I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to just open people up to taking a better look and doing some research on your own. That's where this ascension is so important for anyone from, you know, in their 20s to still in their 60s and 70s. We can still learn things, and we need to keep learning things as life affects us, right? So I think that's about it. Oh, well, then we got to get to the last one, okay? Where we started was Ivomec is the trade name for one of the drugs, and we started using that on our cattle. The health of the cattle increased. Not only did we get rid of the warble flies, that was the one parasite that we were after. These are external things, and lice. But it was also getting rid of worms inside the cattle and smaller parasites inside the cattle. The cattle were just getting healthier. They didn't get pneumonia as much. They didn't get, and even if animals started to get, you know, bronchial diseases, we would treat them with Ivomec. And it became a huge shift for our cattle industry. And it's available to us, and yet it's being downplayed. Like, why? Because what's inside the solution could very well be more parasites. And definitely what's inside some of these things has shown to be parasites. People say, oh, look, you could, if you go down with a microscope and look inside of these things, you can see these things moving. It's nanobots, they call it. No, that's what parasites look like. Parasites are living organisms. The biggest viral or virus of those three levels that I talked about, right? They're the largest. They actually have a nucleus, a cell, or a nucleus in their cell. The other bacteria and regular viruses are smaller, and they don't have that. They have to, you know, kind of, well, they all feed off of something, but the parasite is the worst. You know, it goes after everything. So, you know, what's happening in our world right now is parasites, and it's, our food is full of it. It doesn't matter what you eat. I don't care if you're a vegetarian or a meat lover. You're getting parasites in your system constantly, especially from pork. That's one of the worst. But cook the hell out of it, and you know that usually gets rid of most of it. But you know, then once you cook food, it really doesn't have any enzyme value or anything anyway. So, you know, it's tough. But in the cattle industry, and the reason that I'm so determined to raise natural cattle and stay away from the chemical inputs that they put into them, hormonal growth implants and all of that stuff, is that then you don't have to be battling these parasites as much, or the viruses and and bacteria that are in their bodies, because you're just treating them natural with a natural product which is a beautiful product. So I think that's about all I had to say.
I had a question. I've heard a lot over the years about pork and people saying, pork isn't a good food to eat. And you weren't saying that, but I'm just saying what I've heard over the years. There's even some religions that forbid the consuming of pork. And perhaps it's that very reason, is because maybe they know that there's parasites in the pork. What I'm interested in asking you, though, is from a farmer's perspective or a rancher's perspective, someone who's raised meat. I don't know if you've raised pork before. I know you raised beef, but is there a healthy way to raise pork, to raise pigs, so that the meat doesn't have parasites if you wanted to raise pork for meat? Or is that just sort of natural? It'd be hard to do. It's
pretty hard. Yeah, because pork or pigs, hogs are like us. They're close to us. They're as close to us as you can get almost, I think. I mean, we don't snort, and stuff like that. But but well, some people do. We put that white stuff on the table. But the thing with pigs versus cattle is that pigs or hogs, they'll eat anything. They'll eat each other, and they eat each other's tails and ears and stuff like that, and they'll eat anything. Cattle are herbivores, and they prefer forage, just grasses and stuff like that. I'm not running down pork, okay? If you like the taste and if you think you're getting something out of it, just make sure you cook the shit, cook the good stuff. I've eaten it all my life, most of my life. I love a good side of barbecued baby back ribs, my God. And I'll still eat those, don't get me wrong. But, make sure you cook it, because that's important. With cattle, if we raise them properly, naturally, you can cook a steak and have it blood rare inside. Never do that with a pork chop. I'm telling you, don't do that. But with a steak, that's even better, because then you actually have some enzyme properties coming at you. And the only place you're going to get, potential bacteria or, that kind of stuff on a steak is on the outer edges, right? Because the inside is all protected. So burn the hell out of it on both sides and chalk her back.
Now, Ed, you bring up a couple more questions, because I definitely haven't raised any kind of animals for food myself, so I'm completely ignorant in this category. But you said that pigs eat almost anything. I think of goats when someone says they'll eat almost anything. How are goats in comparison? Like, I know goat meat's a bit tough, and usually it's more used in stews and things like that. But does the goat meat have any tendency toward having parasites in it too, that you know
of? It bothers my nose, goat and lamb. But
it does have a bit of a unique smell to it, for sure.
You got to get used to it, or have some mint sauce. But the thing with goats and sheep, and goats maybe more so, they're still herbivores. They'll eat leaves off of trees and sticks and stuff like that, but they won't eat each other. That's the difference. Like, hogs are kind of a carnivorous mammal, but don't get me wrong, like, most of them are domesticated, aren't offered that, so they just eat the grain and stuff like that. So I'm not saying they're that way, but their tendency, because they're built that way as a carnivore, or a combination, whatever you want to call it. I think it's still a carnivore or herbivore. It's one or the other. But if you're that way, then your body has the tendency already to take on, the parasites more than just a straight herbivore. Again, people are going to go all over the place with this, and their minds are going to go, oh, then I better be just a vegetarian. Well, there's worms in vegetables, folks, and every one of them. I've seen bananas where you take off the end of it and it's crawling, like, I haven't eaten one, but it's like there's bugs in everything, okay? And bacteria and parasites. Parasites is the one we're talking about today mostly.
Now, just before we came on camera today, you were telling me, and you mentioned this in some of your shows earlier this week, that you've been fasting again, and you have not been eating for a few days now, in fact. And I wanted to talk about that only because I was going to ask you the question about, so if someone loves to eat pork and they, realize that there's parasites in pork, then how do we as humans get the parasites out of our system? Fasting might be a way or part of a way. Do you have any protocols that you do for yourself? Because we're not offering medical advice here or anything like that, but you do for yourself to maybe purge yourself a little bit of any kind of parasites or nasty things in your body that you've acquired through eating of food?
Yeah, we can't offer any medical advice or pharmaceutical advice other than Ivomec. But we can certainly offer healthy, natural alternative choices, and that's what I do. And I've always done it, but I've really picked it up the last few years. The fasting that I do it every month I started 3 or 4 days and then went to straight always 4 days. And it's just a water fast. Sometimes I cheated when I started, I kind of got into it, but if you cheat even just a little bit, then the hunger stays with you, and it's mostly in your brain, and I want a little bit of soup tomorrow again, because no soup for you is my attitude this time. So I had soup the first day, a little bit of broth, and I had a cup of tea with some honey. Day one, okay, of my fast this time. And then Martin McNichol, my friend over in Portugal, the Irishman, he says, I'm just going straight water and salt. I said, okay, then I'm going to too, because we did it together this time, eh? And I hunkered down. I think he stopped at day 4, but he hasn't been doing it very often. So his body was starting to think about it more, eh? And I thought, I'm going to keep going. And I've always had, when I got to day 4, I always had the most energy on the morning of day 4. Why, I don't know. But I'd get up and I'm like, holy shit, everything's clicking, like I was just there was no digestion happening anymore after 3 days, and your body is just ready to go, and I'd walk more and I'm like, holy shit. So I did that again, and I went through day 4 to day 5 and just water again after day 1 was over. And the clarity was still there. It was just like, holy cow, everything feels so good. Still doing my regular exercise routine, which I don't like to brag about, but I do 60 push-ups every morning when I get up.
Holy cow, that's like 59 more than I can do.
Well, I do it, and I've done it for a long time. And day 5, it was a little bit tougher, I gotta say, than day 4. So I thought, okay, now I'm getting this, like I'm experimenting with my body, not with pharmaceuticalism, with my own mind and my own, thoughts. And I'll just quickly mention that each morning as well, I take the golden chalice, okay?
Yeah.
Being you're in therapy, okay? Just one drink, and it's that first in the morning. Now we'll move away from that because it turns a lot of people off. But I do it because that's got all of your T cells, it's got all of your minerals and vitamins, your body's actual natural healing ability. Just like Mother Earth regenerates herself, this thing can regenerate itself. Okay, day 5. Did I lose any more weight? Does it look like it to you? Never. The water and the salt. Okay, I still take salt in the morning, and then I take a little bit more in the afternoon. So, but lots of water. Like, make sure it's lots of water if you're going to fast. I'm not a recommender. I don't recommend dry fasting. It's people talk about it and do it, and I'm not saying don't, but I don't recommend it. I think water and salt are the salt of the earth. It's like, that's what we're made of, right? And that's how all.
Sorry to interrupt, but do you put the salt in the water, or do you just do the salt somehow separately, or how do you do it?
Just put it in my hand and then chuck it in my mouth.
Like a half teaspoon or something?
Yeah, at least half teaspoon, and then another one in the afternoon. Sometimes I do it 3 or 4 times if I I don't have a real regime when it comes to the salt, but my morning salt is bamboo salt, so it's highly, um, I don't know, like it takes on some of the properties of the bamboo. It's a highly refined is the word I was going to use, but it also adds to it because of the bamboo. It's something I ran into a few years ago, so I do that. And then in the afternoon, it's just Himalayan salt or Himalayan, however you want to say that word. But then I got to day 6 yesterday morning, and it was, or no, this morning was, no, it was, I started day 6 yesterday. So this morning was the morning of day 6, and my fast ends about noon. Like I haven't stopped yet, but I'm going to this afternoon. I'm going to start to eat a little bit fruit to start with, a shake and stuff, you know, and maybe some eggs for supper. We'll see. But that ending caused me to do my exercises again this morning, right? So the 60 were just a little tougher than yesterday. Okay, I got to say that my energy's just a little bit off, but it's still higher than it is when I'm eating. I guarantee that. Like it's when you're eating, your energy is, your body is thinking about digestion and, you know, going through that process. I've actually watched and listened to people that are breatharian, right? It's one colored man down in the US, and he's just sinewy muscled man, you know, like he's about my age too. And he looks thin, but he's not thin. He's just muscly and you know, one of the fittest men you could ever imagine looking at. He lives in an environment where there's more humidity and more, you know, up here in Canada, when it dries out in the winter, I don't know if you could be a breatharian up here, because I don't know if you get enough humidity in you, because it is important. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Wow. Well, we just got a lesson today on different health regimes that people could try or investigate or research. I mean, you have to do whatever is right for you, and only you know that, you know, and your body will tell you, I'm sure, intuitively. You just, if you're in touch with your own, you know, intuitive self. And I think that's kind of important to state here too, I think. But yeah, anything else that came out of the interview with Jenny and Hamid and Nadia that you maybe want to touch on before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, no, I think I'd like to head people that direction and see what it was about, because I've got an opinion, obviously, and all of this stuff that I'm talking about is my opinion, right? And Jenny has a very interesting opinion. So did Nadia and Hamid. So highly recommend going over there if you got time. You know, like it's everybody's doing their thing, but it was fun. But one last thing on the fasting before we end it is that, you know, when you fast and there's no food or any remnants in your, you know, stomach or digestive system, and I mean, it's amazing. After 6 days, still a little bit comes out. I'm just going to leave it at that without talking too much more. We're not talking about urine here, okay?
Number 2.
A little bit still comes out. So if you think inside of all of that is parasites, okay? Inside of your gallbladder is parasites that get encompassed and become gallstones, right? So when you cleanse like that with a fast, all of that stuff is gone. It gives your body and your healthy immune system a chance to take out the rest of those parasites and bacteria and viruses. And it's, you know, it's the easiest, simplest, but hardest on the mind homeopathic procedure I could ever recommend to anyone. You know, like there's so many people that talk in terms of natural healing and stuff. You want to do it simple, fast. Just drink water. Start with 2 days, go to 3, go to 4, whatever your mind can handle, because it's all mind work. It's all self-mastery. It's not about you starving to death. And it's not about making you sick. If you get sick, that's good. The stuff is coming out of you, you know. But you'll be surprised how many things change. Your inflammation, your, you know, your attitude, your everything switches. It's just a beautiful thing. I recommend it.
what I was going to ask you too is, from my experience, when I fasted for more than a day, and I haven't done that for quite some time, I've done 1 day fast quite a bit. But for anything longer than a day, I have found personally, and I've heard other people have similar experiences, but usually in some ways that first day is the toughest one for a while. And then day 2 is a little easier. Day 3 seems to be, you're starting to get into a rhythm. And like you said, day 4, you're starting to feel like, food, what the heck's that? I don't think I need that right now. No, I'm feeling good. 4 and 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there is usually not so bad. And then perhaps another round of cravings or whatever starts to kick in after that. How is your experience somewhat similar to that?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think day 3 was tough to start with. Like, I mean, like you say, the first day, if you're just getting going and first time fasting, yeah, I recommend you take it up slowly, because you'll be thinking about food a lot. And then like day 3 it gets a little tough on the brain, but right now, do I feel like eating? No. Like I'm not hungry, but I do feel, because I'm such an active guy, like I still walk 7 miles a day, 12-kilometer average. And today she's a little cold, but I'm going to do that again today because I love doing it, getting fresh air and stomping around. So, and I just, I think in terms of biblical at times. So day 7, let's take a break, like done 6 full days, and it's 6 full days now by a little bit already. So day 7, I'm gonna start eating, and then I'm gonna eat for a while. And my regular moon cycle fast is actually only coming on the 4th of March. I decided to do this one for other reasons, kind of thinking in terms of all of these things that are ascending so fast lately. I decided to, really get in touch, so to speak, because your pineal gland and your ability to remember, especially remember things, and like I took those few notes this morning, but I could have gone without those notes, like it was your brain, just your memory, and the memory stick, the crystal thing that's inside of your brain is just functioning at the highest level. And I believe that that's what it is. Our pineal gland is a crystal, and just like the crystals in computers or iPhones or whatever, those are crystals. And what are they for? Memory.
Wow, nice little tie-in on that one. There's one more thing I do want to talk about before we wrap it up, because it just popped in my head, but it's only something that happens once every 268 years or something. Pluto, good old Pluto is coming back on Tuesday. It's a very, very important day. And I thought, you know what? We won't get another chance to talk about this. Well, maybe next Sunday, but then beyond that, we would never be able to talk about it again for another 200 and some years. And I don't think we'll be around the next time. So we might as well take the chance now. What do you know about it, about the Pluto story? What have you heard, and what do you want to say about that? Because I want to give you a chance to talk about that for a sec.
Well, it's going to be slim pickings there, brother, because all I see is a few Facebook posts from some of my spiritual friends, and I love it. I just think in terms of synchronicity with everything else that's going on with, government, politics, banking, you name it. It's all synchronizing, and when they talked like that, I was like, yeah, that sounds good.
Well, that's perfect. I think that's a great way to wrap up our show. It kind of brings us back to, our main theme. Like we always like to talk about banking and the financial side of things, if I can use that word, but money, currency, abundance side of things. Let's use the word abundance. I like that word. Randall, it's been a little bit of a divergent kind of show, a little bit different today, but still fun nonetheless. Any final thoughts? And of course, if you'd be kind enough to give us your final closing blessing, we would love to wrap up the show.
I think we'll just wrap it up. I feel really good, and I'm so happy that we took a little different route today, and we didn't have to ask again like we did last weekend. And that was hard on my brain, harder on my brain than fasting. Let's put it that way. So with peace, harmony, love, abundance, freedom, and gratitude for everyone and everything every day on our minds. Abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria. We love you guys. Thanks, William.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
later.
Love you.
Isn't too hard to see. It's nothing better. It isn't too hard to see. There's nothing better.